Hey everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we're bringing you the third and final part in our How to Play series for Warbonds. Now Warbonds will be up on a crowdfunding site in the very near future. Check the description for all the pertinent information there. It should be noted that this is a paid instructional video, so keep that in mind as you watch this video. If you didn't see parts 1 and 2, be sure to go back and check them out. And now let's get into how to play Warbonds. In-game objects will interact with one another through the performing of abilities. Each ability specifies how an interaction between one or more objects is handled. Some abilities will be passive, some conditional, and others will require an activation cost to be performed. An activatable ability is one that will have a timing, effort, and/or resource cost that must first be paid in order for the ability to be performed. These abilities may also have targeting and conditional requirements that must be satisfied in order for the ability to be performed as well. An example of an activatable ability is Taunt, seen here. The timing and effort cost of Taunt is during turn. This indicates when it can be used, how often, and its priority. Taunt has a resource cost of pay 1 leadership. A resource cost must be paid in order to perform the ability. After an ability's payment cost, follow the remainder of the ability details shown in the ability here. The details inform the player of conditions, targeting range, effects, and potential rule clarifications of the ability. Most importantly, these details explain how the effects of an ability are to be resolved. In the case of Taunt, the ability details are become taunted at the start of their next turn. Many abilities indicate the target selection and conditions, and Taunt does as well. In this case, up to 3 enemy units can be selected as valid targets as long as they are within this warlord's presence. An ability effect details what changes are made to the game state by the ability. In this case, during their turn, a taunted unit gains -1 APT and only target Goyer with their attack abilities. It should be noted that, like elsewhere in an ability, bold and italicized text indicates keywords and game terminology. When a player sees this, they can assume that further details and information can be found in the player guide. All abilities have a timing and effort cost. An ability's timing indicates when the ability can be used, while effort indicates its usage limitations. When a unit or Warcamp takes its turn, it has a limit to the amount of ability types that it can perform. During a unit or Warcamp's turn, it may perform its movement, 1 action, and up to 3 different during turn abilities. These can be performed in any order. Any ability that does not specify a timing and effort cost is a passive or conditional ability type. Movement is considered an ability type, and as we've covered, simply allows you to move the battle map piece of the active unit or Warcamp up to a number of spaces based on their movement speed. This can be done once per turn. The action ability type can only be performed once per turn by the active unit. An example of an action ability type is an attack, unless the ability itself specifies otherwise. A full turn ability type, such as meditation, uses up both a movement and an action in order to be performed. This means that if either has already been used, then this full turn ability cannot be used. Using a full turn ability does not prevent a unit or Warcamp from being able to perform other types of abilities, such as during turn or immediate. A during turn ability, such as Taunt, is performed by the active unit or Warcamp during its turn, as you might expect. This ability is not a movement or action and may be performed while a movement or attack is being performed. The effect of this ability type persists until the end of the turn. During turn abilities that enhance a unit's attack ability can be performed during a duel or duel interruption. An immediate ability, such as Harden, is performable outside of a unit's turn as long as no other ability is currently being performed. This ability has no limit to its usage so long as its payment and activation conditions are satisfied. In the event where multiple immediate abilities are attempting to be performed at the same time, resolve them based on the initiative table's current ordering. Any ability that does not indicate its timing and effort is either a passive or conditional ability, such as Nurture Inducing. Nurture Inducing is actually a passive ability. Passive abilities remain active because they specify no conditions or restrictions for when they are to be performed. As an example, Nurture Inducing is always active, while bestial units are within 2 spaces of it. Conditional abilities, such as Last Caress, are passive in nature, but must wait for its listed condition to be satisfied before it can trigger. When this occurs, the conditional ability is automatically performed without any cost or effort by the unit. The timing of these abilities is immediate, but has the highest priority when resolving. Any player may call out that a conditional ability must be performed when its condition occurs, regardless of ownership. Blood Pool is an end-of-turn ability. This ability is performed when a unit ends their turn just prior to moving the CTI on the initiative table. When multiple end-of-turn abilities must be resolved, the unit's owning player decides the order in which these abilities are resolved. A disabled unit does not trigger any start of turn or end of turn effects or abilities. As a player aid, the Handling Your Turn card can be used by players as guidance for what abilities they can perform during their unit or Warcamp turn. This side of the card reminds players of effects that occur at the start of their turn, the 5 potential abilities they can perform in the middle of their turn, the effects that can occur at the end of turn, and it also reminds players that immediate abilities can be performed by any player on any turn. Players may use tokens, if they wish, to cover up these abilities as they perform them to help them keep track of what they can still perform. Supply is a resource only certain units can be provisioned with. Units with abilities that require paying supply will have a listed starting and maximum supply limit here. These units will always be deployed fully supplied. Units can then replenish their spent supply up to their listed maximum amount through a resupply effect. Squad members can be a payable resource, as you see here. This resource is paid by having the ability performer accumulate the listed amount of damage. If the unit would die as a result of this payment, their ability will be performed first before they die. In the rare case where the unit performing the ability and one or more other units are to die from the effects of this ability, the user of the ability dies first. Some abilities may require a Miscellaneous Resource token. In these cases, the ability performer will detail how the miscellaneous resource is generated. As you can see, Scavenge will generate it for the Domesticated Corvus. These resources can only be utilized by abilities which specifically reference their unique name and color. In this case, Gift. A unit cannot lose their held miscellaneous resources except when being used as payment or upon death, recall, or retreat. Some abilities have an effect that persists for the current game round or will change the state of a unit when they start their turn. For these types of effects, black and white tokens are used as reminders to resolve them. The white token is used for start of turn abilities, while the black token is used for end of round abilities. When this unit's next turn begins, this white token will be removed. When the current round ends, this black token would be removed. All players start the game with a Universal Abilities reference card, which also has these ability rules on the back of it. The Universal Abilities side of the card will remind players of the 6 Universal Abilities that are in addition to a unit or Warcamp's unique abilities. The Deploy Wild unit is an action ability and allows the player to deploy a squad unit onto a nearby unoccupied wild terrain. Keep in mind that all normal deployment rules apply. Duel is an action that only warlords can take and allows them to challenge a warlord that is within one space to a duel. Making this challenge automatically allows the challenging warlord to gain 1 leadership, and the challenged warlord can pay 1 leadership to decline the duel if they wish. If the duel is not declined, then an honorable duel will commence. If a warlord loses an honorable duel, their chaos and law units within presence lose 1 loyalty. We covered recall in part 2 of this video series, so be sure to go check that out. Free road movement allows a unit to land or take 1 free movement onto a nearby ground space that has a road. This will not use the unit's movement for their turn. Also, a war camp that is in encampment form can still perform a free road movement. Power Strike allows a unit to pay loyalty or leadership so that their attack will ignore all resistances of any target. A unit targeted by Power Strike cannot react using Full Dark or Innocent abilities. Duel Interruption may only be performed by a squad, and they must immediately pay 1 loyalty. If the unit is within presence of its warlord during a duel, it then interrupts it with an attack or block. They use an attack, it must target the enemy warlord, and in this case may ignore targeting range. A blocking unit is targeted with an attack instead of its warlord. This block interruption is performed while another unit's attack is being performed. A chaos unit may only attack, while a law unit may only block. As we discussed in the previous video, one of the primary ways a unit will leave your army is through recall. Another way a deploy unit can leave your army is through retreat. When a player is defeated, all of the remaining units perform an immediate retreat from the battle map. When a unit retreats, return its card and ID pieces to the recruitment bin and card pile. Retreat does not generate a 1 loyalty refund as a recall would. Warcamps can serve as a place of rest for warlords via their provision ability. By performing provision to rest warlords, they will heal some of their accumulated damage. The amount of damage healed is based on the Warcamp's listed recovery rate stat. Because squad units cannot be healed due to their health system, they must instead restock their lost squad members. A squad unit restocks by reducing or removing entirely their accumulated damage. Warcamps, during their respective turns, can fully restock a squad unit via the provision ability. In order for a supply-using unit to regain their depleted supply, they must be resupplied. These units can be resupplied up to their maximum supply amount. A unit that is already holding their maximum supply amount cannot be successfully resupplied. Warcamps, during their turns, can fully resupply a unit via the provision ability, and some units have abilities that will allow them to resupply themselves, or a nearby ally. During play, 2 warlords can enter a deadly one-on-one combat known as a duel. A duel is a round-driven series of exchanging attacks between 2 dueling warlords. Initiating a duel takes an action performable only by warlords. When challenging another warlord to a duel, you must target an opponent's warlord that is within 1 space of yours. The challenging warlord will gain 1 leadership. The challenged warlord may decline the duel, in which case they will have to lose 1 leadership, but then no duel will take place. However, if the duel is not declined by the opponent, then the 2 warlords will begin an honorable duel. When engaging in a duel, the rest of the game is paused until the duel is resolved. Only the 2 dueling warlords and their ally units that are within their warlord's presence can participate in the duel. A duel ends either when a warlord is killed or a warlord chooses to end the duel. Warlords are only able to end a duel at the end of each round of exchanging attacks. The warlord with the lower initiative, in this case Sarah, attacks first. If a warlord chooses to end the honorable duel, they are the loser of the duel. Anytime a duel is lost, that warlord's chaos and law units within their presence each will lose 1 loyalty. The dueling table board guides players through the dueling process. This board also has its own current turn indicator. This board indicates if a warlord has lost an honorable duel and what the penalties will be. It also should be mentioned that a duel can become dishonorable. If a warlord has an ally interrupt the duel, they bring dishonor to it. This means the opponent can then end the duel without penalty. If a warlord has an ally interrupt the duel, they have brought dishonor to it, which means the other warlord can end the duel without incurring a penalty. Once a duel has been resolved, the rest of the game can resume, picking up immediately from where it last left off, as indicated by the initiative table's current turn indicator. During a duel, you will ignore any start of turn or this round token effects. Also, any terrain occupation effects will be ignored. Only a participating warlord and any unit that blocked can be targeted with an attack. Any attack that normally can target multiple units can only target 1 unit during a duel. Any unit ability type that is not an attack ability, a during turn ability that enhances an attack, or the dual interruption universal ability are disabled while a duel is active. This includes passive and conditional abilities. For instance, Nurture Inducing on the Orphan Beast cannot be used during a duel. Movement of any kind also cannot occur during a duel. The same is true for end of turn abilities. Units cannot gain loyalty during a duel. And if a unit dies during a duel, the resolution of their death is handled after the duel ends. This means that conditional death-triggered abilities will still be performed as normal. When either warlord dies during a duel, the duel immediately ends, with the other warlord being the winner. During a duel between warlords, their surrounding ally units within their presence may be compelled to support their warlord by interrupting the duel. Keep in mind, this will bring dishonor to the duel. This is known as the Duel Interruption Universal ability. Performing a duel interruption requires a payment of 1 loyalty. When a squad unit interrupts a duel, they can do so either by attacking the opposing warlord or blocking a set of attacks targeting their warlord. A chaos unit, such as you see here, can only interrupt the duel by attacking the opposing warlord, while a law unit can only interrupt by blocking a set of attacks. As you can see, the dueling table reminds players of when interruptions are to be checked. At these steps, each player decides whether they would like to perform a duel interruption with any number of their loyal squad units that are within their warlord's presence. If both warlords were to interrupt the duel, then either would be able to withdraw from the duel without incurring a penalty. There is no limit to the number of duel interruptions that can occur during each round of a duel, so long as each interrupting unit is able to make the loyalty payment. If the interruption takes the form of a block, the block must be performed prior to the attacker's declaration of attack details. Finally, let's discuss Warcamps. Warcamps serve as the headquarters for each player's army, provide a reliable source of unit deployment, provisioning of restocked members, health, and supplies, and provide both defensive and offensive combat capabilities. If a player's Warcamp is destroyed, that player is defeated. But if the player manages to obtain a level 3 Warcamp, they have achieved victory. Just like with units, Warcamps can perform various abilities during their turn. Warcamps have 2 forms. Each restricts which abilities can be performed based on whether the camp is in encampment phase, as you see here, or caravan form, as you see here. As an encampment, a Warcamp can perform the deploy ability. However, it cannot perform move. As a caravan, a Warcamp can perform the move ability, but cannot perform deploy. In either form, the Warcamp can attack, provision, and convert. Warcamp turns are handled after all enabled units take their turn, as indicated by the initiative table. Warcamps do not have any abilities that actually take an action. It should be noted, though, that Warcamp movement takes a full turn and is, as we mentioned, only performable in caravan form. Warcamps do not have a reference card, and instead players should reference the player guide, currently on page 7 of the player guide, for information on the Warcamps. Because of this, the accumulation of damage and resource tokens for Warcamps is placed on each Warcamp's respective initiative table row slot, here and here. Warcamps have no vulnerabilities, immunities, or resistances, and they will accumulate damage from both life and death damage. They also have no attributes other than being a Warcamp. And while Warcamps will ignore terrain occupation effects, terrain movement cost, and free road movement both still apply. Listed within the player guide's Warcamp details, players will find the Warcamp stats. These are different based on the current level of the Warcamp. The value of the maximum defense points indicates the amount of damage that a Warcamp will need to accumulate in order to be destroyed. Warcamps can repair their defense points and recover an amount of health points for Warlord units based on their current recovery rate stat here. When a Warcamp performs provision to rest a Warlord or the Warcamp repair event occurs, use the Warcamp's recovery rate to determine the amount of damage to be reduced. Any battle map space that is within the listed border size stat value is considered inside of the Warcamp's borders. This includes both ground and sky terrain. All spaces within a Warcamp's borders are available for targeting by that Warcamp's abilities. If the borders of 2 or more Warcamps overlap, then they can target each other. And the attacks per turn functions just as it did in our previous explanation in the last video. As players level up their Warcamps, they should be sure to recheck the abilities, as there will be some changes between them from level 1 to level 2. Warcamps move around the battle map in caravan form, as we've mentioned. Warcamps move using the move ability. Warcamp movement is not blocked by enemy or ally units. This allows for moving through and occupying the same space as an enemy unit or ally units. However, other Warcamp pieces on the battle map will block each other. The caravan movement type is mounted, and it should be noted that the Warcamp can perform the free road movement onto a nearby road-enhanced terrain space, whether it's in caravan form or in encampment form. A Warcamp can be upgraded with improved stats and abilities by gaining level tokens. When a Warcamp levels up, its upgraded effects are applied immediately. Warcamps start at level 1. To level up a Warcamp, the player must acquire war tokens. It takes 3 war tokens to exchange for 1 level token. This exchange occurs immediately. There are several ways to gain war tokens. If a player defeats another player, either by killing their warlord or destroying their Warcamp, the conquering player gains 3 war tokens, which effectively means they immediately level up. During the Influence the Public event, the player that wins the bid gains 2 war tokens. During the Concede event, if a player chooses to concede, they place 3 war tokens on 3 different spaces within their borders, and then remove their Warcamp from the board. These war tokens can be picked up by any unit that ends their turn on a battle map space with a war token. To assault a Warcamp with the unit, it must occupy a ground or sky space within the Warcamp's borders. Additionally, a unit that targets a Warcamp with an attack ability cannot target anything else while performing their attack, even with attacks that normally have multiple targets. It should be noted this does not apply when a Warcamp targets another Warcamp. They can include other targets. And there you go. That concludes everything you need to know to play Warbonds. I hope you've enjoyed this series. Be sure to check out the other videos again if you have not. Be sure to check out Warbonds as its crowdfunding campaign launches. Again, check the description below for all of the pertinent information there. And until next time, if you're bored online, board offline.